Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Laura Swain, and I'm currently the Secretary of the McGill Women's Alumnae Association and Chair of this event, the Come and Be Inspired event series. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this evening's fireside chat. As you likely know, every woman who has graduated from McGill is a member of the McGill Women's Alumnae Association, also known as the MWAA. The MWAA began as a group of the first female graduates of the university back in 1890. And over the past 130 years, the MWAA's mission has remained simple and steadfast: to advance the leadership potential of McGill's female graduates. In recent years, the MWAA's Come and Be Inspired series has showcased speakers innovating in fields such as AI, engineering, and business, discussing the latest and greatest within their domain. The aim being to inspire and fire up attendees to explore new possibilities, get out there, and take action. Throughout the turbulence and maybe say Zoom fatigue of the past year, getting out there and even inspiration itself looks a bit different to all of us. Tonight's fireside chat on showing up for yourself and your passions will flip the script and take a look at inspiration, motivation, or lack thereof, through the lens of our two guests and McGill alumnae, Tami Zuckerman and Nogol Madani, with a discussion moderated by Julie Savaria. Tonight's event will start with a fireside chat and will be followed by an interactive Q&A session. Please send any questions you have for our speakers through the chat panel at any time during the discussion. They will be collected by the facilitators and saved for the end. But first, a brief intro into our panelists and their impressive bios before handing the baton to Julie to lead the discussion. First off, we have Tami Zuckerman. She's a chief mom behind Garage Sale. While on extended mat leave in 2011, she came up with the idea for a safer and better buy and sell app that would stretch families' budgets and connect local communities. Tami contributes her time as a mentor for Techstars, Toronto's first Canadian accelerator program, and in the Founder City Project, a peer community of 500 plus founders and teams trained to support each other, solve problems, and attract talent. Her newest project, well, I'll let her talk about that more in the discussion. Our next guest, Nogol Madani, is a founder and CEO of Glee Factor. As an engineer, entrepreneur, and work culture expert, she believes in culture change using science and creativity. With Glee Factor programs, learning experiences, and digital resources, she and her team help leaders develop engaged, high-performing, and inclusive teams. Glee Factor's list of clients include Desjardins, Rio Tinto, and SAP, just to name a few. And finally, our event moderator, Julie Savaria, is the founder of Savaria Consulting, a boutique firm focused on design around justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or JEDI for short. Julie works with forward-thinking companies specializing in leadership development and social impact consulting. She's also the co-chair for the Be Local Quebec chapter for the B Corp community, focusing on collective impact and activism, and is a manager of fellowships and scholarships at the McCall-McBain Foundation. In addition, closer to my heart, Julie is also a member of the MWA board and co-chair for this event. Welcome, ladies. Thank you all for being here. And without further ado, I will pass the virtual mic to Julie to take away the discussion.
Thank you so much, Laura, for the wonderful introductions. And it is my great pleasure to kickstart this conversation tonight with our two great and amazing panelists. I think we can all agree, according to their bios, that they have a lot to contribute to our conversation tonight, which is really to show up for yourself in this Come and Be Inspired edition. So just to kick off the conversation before we go back and forth, I just like for each of you to maybe tell us a little bit about what does your now look like, right? So maybe talk us through one of your current projects, and at the same time, maybe tell us a little bit about how does a really challenging day show up, and what's really different from how you show up for yourself today during these challenging days versus the pre-COVID era.
Who would you like to start? Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to discuss such an important, topic today. And I feel fortunate to be collaborating with Nogol, who's solving such an important problem in the workforce. And I think, I probably speak for both of us in saying that, like, it kind of can look like we have it all put together, but when you ask, what does our now look like? I'd say a train wreck, if I'm going to be honest. But no, if I sit back and I think about it, after building Garage Sale, I've learned a few things. So it's not a train wreck. I'm building a train and the track, and it's in a million pieces. But I'm currently building the Little Campus, which is an early childhood education school in Toronto. And we were supposed to be open already. And when COVID hit, all of our funding was pulled. The city shut down, so we couldn't get our permits. And construction was halted, so we couldn't build. And we already had invested, $8 million in the project, but we were left with nothing but an empty building and no insight into what would happen next. And so, today I'm happy to say that we're back on track and building. And here I am. I just shared yesterday our career page, and everyone is putting party hats and congratulations, like all is going so well. And while it is going better than it was, it's a very scary time and it's a very stressful time, and I'm very overwhelmed. But moving forward was the only option. And I only know that through building my previous company, through building Garage Sale, because there was no COVID during Garage Sale, but we had a ton of other hurdles, like big hurdles, layoffs and funding issues and stuff that we had to get through. And while it was really, really tough, we did get through them. So, that's what I'd say where I'm at right now.
That was great, Tami. That was a great start. Yeah. So, yeah, it was actually true. So for us, it's similar things. So, Belief Factor is basically a work culture management firm. And before COVID, we used to do everything in person. So COVID hit, everyone needed our services because people were just moving remotely, and they needed to connect and to be engaged and to communicate more effectively. But at the same time, we didn't have the means because we never thought about not doing things in person. So in a month or two, we needed to pivot completely to online, but which was extremely hard and challenging because we just had all of our clients, but everything got on hold. We couldn't actually serve them. So we lost a lot of, clients and all that, and services and, contracts. But at the same time, we developed these new projects. And I have to say that now I think that they're much more promising than the ones before. They're much more scalable because they're online. Now we have digital products. So I think that it turned out to be a blessing for us, but it's still, as now we're talking, when it comes to business development and sales, it's still challenging because we've changed our business model completely. But as Tami said, I think that it's going well because we know that we have challenges and we somehow manage them. So I think that we're super actually positive and we see the small results. But obviously, I personally have learned to take it slowly, celebrate small wins, because obviously the main objectives and goals, they cannot be met because of the COVID.
Yeah, I cannot agree more, right? Especially when you add the layer of having a family or people to take care of on top of everything. It just adds this extra layer of challenge that you have to incorporate into already being home and just rethinking your whole business model or halting important projects like Tami mentioned, or just reinventing yourself, like you mentioned, Nogol. So congratulations for just thriving really to it and not just surviving. And I think that's really a key component, right? That's part of showing up for yourself, is that it's not just about survival and doing good. It's about finding a way to thrive, right? So since we were talking about, the project that you were doing and how you were able to reinvent yourself or just maybe push some projects forward again, I know that personally, sometimes it's hard to stay motivated, especially when the future is so uncertain and it changes every single week. Like even today, the Quebec Prime Minister mentioned that they were going to keep everything closed till January, right? So my question to you is, like, when you think about your short and long-term goals, how do you stay positive and just motivated to keep going, aside from, I guess, that entrepreneurial flame that you have, that you both have, but like, what really pushes you?
So, you know, it's a tough one because I'm not sure that I always get it right. And Virage was a huge learning experience for me because there were so many peaks and valleys. And I think understanding that that's normal was probably the biggest takeaway. You know, I learned to believe in the process and the path to success. Like, nobody's become successful without sleepless nights. And I learned that along your journey, like, you're going to hit roadblocks and walls, and you can choose to turn back, like you can give up, or you can keep walking. You know, like, I talked before, like, we went through layoffs with Garage Sale, and I'm such a people pleaser. Like, that killed me. I went home that night. I wanted to quit. I shed a lot of tears. But if I did that, then I'd let down millions of users. So I was kind of stuck, you know. But being stuck was probably the best thing that ever happened because it forced me to persevere. And now I understand that the peaks and valleys are normal. And so I think you just keep going because it's something that you've poured your heart and your soul into. And if you're truly passionate about what you're building, that passion is what's probably going to sail you through the toughest times.
I totally agree with you, Tami. And it's interesting because, you know, for me as an engineer, I'm super result-oriented person. And it's not really fun when you're an entrepreneur and have your own business because it's really the opposite. You have to learn to enjoy the process and somehow believe the process because the results sometimes like come much later. So I've learned that a lot. And obviously during this time, that was the biggest learning experience. The other thing that I've also learned is that, you know, I totally agree with like Tami around the passion and the purpose. Like, I love what I do, but it's important that I believe in what I do because I'm coming from toxic work cultures. I was not necessarily a victim of it, but I experienced it firsthand. So I really believe in the work. So I think that like really pushes me. And when we do the things that we see the results, it's extremely like gratifying and meaningful for me. So I think that just keeps you like somehow helps you like move forward. But at the same time, I'm extremely like I have this perfectionist approaches to things, and therefore I develop extremely unattainable goals that this has to be perfect and all that. And during the last couple of months, I've learned to develop smaller goals, do smaller celebrations, and that really helped me going because again, those larger goals, they might not be, you might not get them during such an uncertain time like COVID, but I'm constantly trying to, you know, look at the strategy, look at the small steps along the way. And if anything is met and checked, a little celebration, a little bit of moments of gratitude, even though it doesn't mean much, just because it's not necessarily the final result. But I think that it's helping me keep me motivated and keep me moving forward.
That's great advice.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely great advice. And actually, I'd like to just ask you as well, with those two pieces of advice that you gave us on how you can stay positive. Do you find that you can apply these in other aspects of your life? Because now we talked really about the entrepreneurial mindset, but do you find that having those tricks and tips help you cope better in other areas of your life?
Tami, you want to go first?
Oh, I thought are you asking any of us or you're asking?
Yeah, both of you. Sorry.
I thought it was a follow-up. Well, you know, yeah, it's great advice and I really need to take it. And I think I've probably preached some of the same. But I want to say, like, I'm a little bit of you sound like a bit of an A-type personality and I'm sort of the same. And I think, you know, we talk about work-life balance. It's almost like such a buzz sentence these days. But the one thing that I've learned, I think that's where I haven't figured that out yet. But what I have figured out is that anyone who says they've had work-life balance figured out may be lying. I really believe that. I think it's really, really hard to do. But what's better is to forgive yourself for not always being the perfect founder, the perfect boss, the perfect mother, the perfect wife, perfect daughter, all of those things, and forgiving yourself. And then, as Nogol said, like small wins, like, you know what, you read a bedtime story tonight, you sang to your daughter tonight, you did their routines that they needed, they got to bed, they're fed, they're healthy, they're safe. You know, you're another day in business today and your employees are happy. Like little things, celebrating those wins, I find also really help in my life too.
I totally agree with you. And I love, Tami, the idea of like being gentle, because I think as women, we're not that much gentle with ourselves. We're extremely hard on ourselves. So like being gentle is really one thing that I'm learning as myself too. And, you know, the other thing that I learned, like that I can somehow apply in my daily life is really the sense of play and a sense of rest and a sense of pause. I'm someone that I really define productivity as doing all the time. As Tami said, like, you know, it's just like you have to do something. But during COVID, I've learned, and during this like huge, you know, pivot and all that, I've realized how much of the productivity lies in the being mindset, in reflection mindset, not doing things, but somehow reevaluating things. So I started to see the value of it. So I hope that I'm trying to somehow bring a bit of that into my life, and I can see that it doesn't help like have the perfect work-life balance, but at least it helps me actually to regain energy a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And did you find that you tried new things that absolutely did not work for you? And if so, can you maybe give us some examples of what did not work or what you found work for you to just help you be present and to be vested in your projects, your work, or whichever path you are taking right now?
I mean, I can answer that. Like, to be honest with you, what doesn't work for me in general is following other people's routines. Like, you know, we're going through, like, especially during COVID, like 5 things that it's gonna, like, you know, keep you motivated, 3 things that you do this. Like, in general, like when I started to, you know, like my journey of entrepreneurship and changing like careers and all that a couple of years ago, I was so keen about like, what did these people do? They wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and all that. But with time, I've realized that doesn't work for me. Like I have to find what works personally. I have to find my own personalized way of working, productivity, resting, and all of that. So that was a huge revelation, because during COVID, I've realized that there are tons of these things coming all along, like that this is, you gotta do this, like 15 minutes of this, 20 minutes of things. And it was easier for me because of developing that little self-awareness that I can read them, some of them will work and some of them don't. For me personally, journaling, I love it. I love the idea of writing a lot. And during this time, it was a bit of downtime, so I think it helped me a lot. And like, as I said, reassessing the project, reassessing what I'm doing, the way I'm doing it, all the changes, like everything. And I think that journaling for me is one of those things that is extremely helpful. Doesn't mean that I do it every time, every day, or like, but it's just something that I've realized that whenever I need it, it's a good tool. It's been helpful.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with that. Like, you just need to know yourself, like know yourself well, know what you like, and make sure to incorporate some of your likes in your day every day. And I'm not talking about, you know, taking a full 2 hours to do it, or even an hour to do it. Even if it's 5 minutes to do something for yourself, it's so important. And I'm going to be really real about what I like, you know, because you hear all kinds of people talk about the meditation they do, the heavy workouts, the journaling, that, you know, that's all great. But for me, and maybe some people will be able to relate, I was just thinking about the things that I like, 3 things that I really like. So 1, I really like food, like fine dining. So like, I love oysters, for example. I know this is strange, but I love oysters, and I haven't been to a restaurant in so long. So I decided to buy my own oysters, YouTube how to shuck them, and I sit down at night. once in a while and just shuck my oysters and eat them in front of a great episode of whatever. Because when I built Garage Sale, I stopped watching TV for 6 years while building it. I stopped doing everything. And the truth is I at some point, I really did burn out. I gained 60 pounds building that company. You know, I like food. So I medicated with food in the wrong way. And it's just like, you gotta still do these things to keep your sanity. And then the third thing is just, I really enjoy walking my daughter and my dog. I walk them together. The dog walks like right beside the stroller. And so I find time to do that also. And that's my, I guess, my exercise. But all this to say, it's just like all these articles that you read. I mean, there's so many articles of what you could do during COVID that just won't work for you. Like, you need to soul search and say, what is it, as simple as it is, what is it that you like, and just find time to do it.
Totally agree with you. And actually, you know, like the other thing, like I'm exactly like you, Tami, a foodie, and I've realized that during the first couple of months, like cooking together with my husband and like doing like small moments of like eating together, dancing to a stupid like song, like any small thing, as Tami said. I'm so happy that you brought it up, that it could be very simple things. It doesn't need to be these new habits, because it actually takes a lot of time to develop habits.
Yeah,
so it's harder, you know. It's a lot of it's very hard to do that during an uncertain time. Yeah, a lot of pressure. So I think like things that it gives you like instant joy, and you know that you're in your flow and you don't need to push yourself to do it. I think that I'm on for it. If it's singing, like dancing, writing, cooking, whatever that is for the person. And I think the soul searching, I love that word, and like self-discovery, it's a fun process to find those things.
Yeah, I can totally relate on the food thing, and I don't think having oysters by yourself at home is weird. I absolutely adore oysters as well. I just don't have the patience that you do to actually learn, and you do, how to shuck them. But I am with you on that, especially when you're in Montreal, right? Like, it's the city of such good food, and
Yes.
I think it's honestly, it is what's the hardest for me, is not being able to go on a date night, you know, with my husband, or even just by myself, going to eat outside or to go work, you know, in a cafe, right? Because this is, for me, this is how I work most of the time. If I work at home, you know, there's a good chance I can get things done, but not necessarily 100% until I actually build my own office. But otherwise, I like to go to cafes, and then you go and do cafe hopping, I guess, and try different places. So I'm really happy to hear that I'm not alone in this predicament.
Not at all. Not at all.
You need to turn your office into a cafe, play the music that they play, get some specialty coffees, get some, I don't know, squares, Nanaimo bars, whatever. So Starbucks has.
Like, fun fact, I actually started drinking coffee during the pandemic, like a month ago. I was not drinking coffee before. And I think having just my 2 young kids at home all the time just forced me to just up my game a little bit if I wanted to get anything done at the end of the day. And I think, Tami, you can relate with your young daughter, right?
Yeah, you know, and maybe that's a good segue to the next question that you haven't asked yet, but I'll just voluntarily say it. Like, you know, I get asked that a lot, and I think it's a good question. It's like, how do you balance, you know, work life, but also like life being a mom, and especially, so I have an 8-year-old and I have a 21-month-old. So like, the 21-month-old, she's a great baby, but she's a baby, so she needs a lot of care. And while I have help in the day with a nanny, and it's still a lot. And so it means that, you know, your whole day starts, she's waking up in the 5s now. Like, I don't know what happened, like, you know, I don't know what happened, the time change, whatever, but like the 5. So I have like a whole day until 9 a.m. when my son is at school and my nanny starts. It feels like a whole day. And then you have your whole work day that, you know, I have help here, but like my office door, it has like a glass on it, and I see this little hand sometimes, you know, like, Mommy, and she wants to come in. And so I let her in. And as you can see behind me, I have a little desk, that's on Tuesdays, it's my son's desk. He has a 4-day week at school, which I'm so glad he's back in school. But that one day I have to take off the full day of work to help him with his homework and homeschool and activities and stuff like that. And then, you know, it's this crazy thing where like my office that was once my own, I've had to share it because there, you know, there's not so many spaces that I could have him sitting. I need him beside me so I could work and help him at the same time. So then my daughter, who's now 20 months, comes in and wants to like draw with him. And then there's crayons all over my floor. But by the time I like realized, like tonight, just before this webinar, I was picking up 100 crayons off the floor and Cheerios because, you know, you can see the background, and while it looks clean now-ish, it isn't, you know? So my life is just like, it's this funny thing where I'm a professional woman, you know, trying to do my job, yet I'm multitasking, constantly, you know, prioritizing whatever is happening in that moment. And my day, you know, the work day has to end at 3:45 because I have to pick up my son because there's no aftercare because of COVID. They won't do aftercare because they won't mix the cohorts. So then I have to make dinner for everybody, and then it's like the bed routine and everything. So by the time everyone's in bed, it's 8 o'clock, and that's when my second night shift starts. You know, so it's a lot, but it is what it is. And as I said earlier, work-life balance is really hard, especially when you're building your own company, because it's kind of all intertwined. And so I've just learned to forgive myself for not doing it all perfectly.
That is a great advice. Go ahead, Nogol. No, yeah, go ahead.
No, like I just wanted to say hats off. I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I work, you know, in the team we have like people with kids, and I see actually the struggle is real. It's really like I'm really proud to see how like people around us and the professionals are like doing everything and juggling things, but it's extremely challenging. So hats off to you guys with the kids during this time, because it is a lot, and also for knowing that you can forgive yourself. That's also a very good lesson. I'm telling you.
That took a while, but you know what? I think everybody's like normal is their own. Like when I didn't have kids, it was hard then too. You know, like you just don't know. And then it's also a blessing in disguise because kids are a distraction from those times, especially during COVID when things can get pretty dark and heavy, right? Like I don't have time to think about those things. I'm like go, and maybe that's a bit of a blessing in disguise. And don't let it sound all like sound bad or anything like that. Like it's hard, but it's wonderful at the same time. Like I really
enjoy. It's
enjoy.
Too late because I'm already pregnant, so it's too late.
What, you are?
Yeah, I am.
Oh my God!
I cannot change my decision. I'm scared though, I have to say.
It sounds so scary. I swear it's not. It just becomes a new normal. Like it'll be fine.
No, I think it's a new, you know, it's a new challenge.
Oh, congratulations.
Also my COVID, yes, that's also my COVID resolution.
Well, you know what? Like you already have people. Like we can talk about it, no problem. Like we will give you great tips.
I'm sure about that. I'm sure about that.
Just before we continue, I just want to remind the audience that if you have questions, please write them in the chat feature, and then after this little conversation, we'll be able to ask the questions. All right. Oh my God, that was such a great news. Thank you for brightening the day even more. That is amazing. So I guess I'd just like to maybe just go back to like the concept of showing up for yourself, right? So can you maybe give for each of you the two main things that you do and where you spend your time and energy to you know, to show up for yourself, like 2 tips?
I mean, 2 tips. Oh, that's a hard one. So basically, you know, I think the most important way to show up for yourself is to know yourself. I think that's the best gift. And I think that the other thing that, you know, Tami actually talked a lot about, developing a bit of self-compassion. So like forgiving yourself and like knowing like that you're doing your best and that's fine. So this is somehow the narrative that I'm trying to have. At the same time, you know, I think for me, when I know myself, you know, there are all these negative self-talks and all that stuff. And when you know yourself, you know how to manage it, how to manage your emotions and all of that. And I think that's extremely helpful. And again, for me, comes a lot from pausing, from like taking some time off, really thinking about what I like. It could be like reading a couple of, you know, pages of a book. It could be scrolling down on the internet for 2 hours doing nothing but like literally just checking everything and comes up. It could be like buying something for myself, like a $15 like nail polish or whatever. But it's really like a self-care in a way that it somehow like helped me gain a bit of energy. And I think the other thing that in general in the self-awareness process I've actually learned is that when you develop the self-compassion and you actually know how to self-care, you have more self-trust, and it brings a lot of great results into the business and into your daily life because you're much more grounded, especially during this time. And you know, you can make better decisions. So for me, it's really a couple of tips that could help me like regain energy, and it doesn't need to be anything fancy, just anything that makes me happy. But the knowledge and the discovery of that process, I think it's enjoyable too.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we talked a little bit about, you know, forgiving ourselves and all of that, but if I wanted to add a little bit more, it would be, you know, also just respecting ourselves. There, I find that through my journey of you know, shifting careers and being an entrepreneur, I did experience a little bit of what they call imposter syndrome, which is where you really just don't feel like you're worthy of all of the, you know, the things that people are saying about you. Wow, you built this huge company. Wow, you raised like money from Sequoia in the Valley and this and that. Like the, people can be actually quite, in a strange way, like starstruck when I go back to Montreal because they use garage sale. It's such a part of their life, and then they're like, wow, you built that, you know. And I just get really small inside, and I think, oh gosh, they have no idea. Like I'm just me, you know, like I didn't do anything, but I did do something. And you know, I used to sit at the board room table. I mean, I'm talking, I was at Sequoia Capital, like they're in all the movies. They're the investors of YouTube and Apple and all those big companies. And you know, they're all speaking tech jargon and business jargon that was all new to me. I have a background in education, and I would sit there with my notebook and write down all these acronyms and you know what is DAU? It's daily active users. I know so much now, but back then I didn't know anything. And so I would just kind of pretend to listen, and then I would have like a whole Google session at night finding out what they were talking about. It was the best university program, or the second best, maybe McGill was the first, but it was a great university program that I attended. And guess what? I did learn so much, and I did achieve so many things. And I think we need to respect ourselves and change that mantra about we're not good enough, or we just did a little thing or whatever, to yes, we are good enough. We did a pretty significant thing. I impacted the lives of millions of users, and let me just own that for a moment. And I still, you know, after all these years, I still struggle with that today. And I'm still working at it, because I just don't want people to feel like I think I did a big thing, because I don't. But do you know what I mean? So I think we need to just be more respectful to who we are, what we've achieved, and own it.
I totally agree with you. I actually couldn't agree more, because you know, I'm also coming from engineering background, now as a work culture, you know, field. And for me, it took a while to just somehow internalize that I've gained it, I've learned it. And it's extremely, I can see that even, you know, with your clients, with your outside world, how you think about yourself and how you respect yourself and how you see your achievements, it's basically what it's being reflected to others. So it is extremely important. And, you know, like imposter, when it comes to especially women, we're not necessarily that much good at it, because in the workplace and in life in general, we're not invited to brag about ourselves and to be proud of what we achieve. So I think it's a bigger societal, you know, like issue. But I totally agree with you, Tami. Thank you so much for bringing up that it is one way to showing up for yourself, that to remind yourself that I've done it, it's good, you know, I've gained it, I've done all these like great stuff. I think that this is extremely important, because then it's going to give you that momentum to move forward and to do more great stuff.
Yeah.
Like you guys have so much in common. Like it's pretty interesting to just witness here. So now I'm wondering, do you guys have any questions for each other that you're curious about?
Yeah, what are you doing tomorrow? We should hang out.
Yeah.
Online.
Do you want to first or I go first?
You can go ahead.
So basically, like Tami and I, we just got to know each other, and I just checked her latest project, not the one before, but the daycare and everything. And it was very interesting for me because the words that she used and she's trying to somehow bring into the child education is basically what we're doing in the work culture with adults. And my question is that why we have to spend all these years, like what's missing in this years of education, that the things that you're starting, like the child's, I don't know, education with and developing skill set with is still a huge challenge in the workplace, and it needs a huge conviction that this is an important, topic. So what's missing?
Yeah, so we even spoke a little bit of this offline before, and we should just kind of repeat what I thought. It was a great conversation to go like, when I ran Virage Sale, we were 2 people at our kitchen table, and we built the team up to 150, and scaling a team is like no easy thing. And I'd be asked over and over again, you have a background in education, you're a teacher, how is it that you're running this huge tech company, right? And so for me, I saw a lot of parallels in running a classroom to running a whole team. And it turns out that adults and children are not that different. Children are just little adults, and adults are grown-up children. And so, how you taught your class is very similar to how you motivate and inspire, or even teach your company, your team, right? So, for example, we had a marketing team and a customer support team, and the engineering team and the management team, and the way that you would work with your engineering team was very different than the way you would work with your marketing team, for example. There were very different personalities. And the same goes for your classroom. You have all different types of kids in your classroom and different types of learners. And your job as an educator is not to teach your class as a whole. It's to find out what type of learners you have in your class and make sure that you reach each and every one of them. And usually there's 2 or 3 different kinds of learners. So for example, like when I was teaching math, you would have the kids that just wanted the rote or the quick fix to how to solve a math problem. And then you had children who really needed to understand why, and then they would get the answer. So I actually used to teach math in 2 different lessons. I used to separate the kids and teach the quick tricks to one and to one set and get them off to work. And then I would teach the long part. And you'd have some kids who wanted both, actually. And so the same went for the workplace. It was like you need to find out what type of learners you have, what type of personalities you have, and treat them as individuals. So I think that's missing from the workplace. And I am very proud of the company culture that we built at Virage Sale. In fact, that's what I want to bring to the little campus. The daycare industry is very broken here in Toronto. I can talk about that in a second, but I only wish actually that I had a company like Nogol's company to turn to, because I feel like I had to invent culture changes where I was trying to build a company and not trying to fix culture issues. And so it would have been nice if I knew you back then, right? I would have definitely used your company.
So much. Yeah, but thank you so much for bringing that up, because I love this idea that, because unfortunately in the workplace, they're always searching for one fits for all solutions. And I love this idea that, like a stereotypes, like let's find like one way of building a culture, like it's a perk culture, it's a millennial culture. And I love this idea that you brought up, that it needs to be personalized. Like I think it's the theme of personalizing and customizing. It keeps coming back. And I think it's extremely important, especially when it comes to creating an inclusive work culture where everyone feel heard, because they think that, okay, I don't need to change myself to fit in this culture that is somehow designed for this certain type. And I think that's extremely important, and that's what's missing.
Yeah,
thank you.
that is what's, and it would be nice, you know, like even at Varsho, we did all kinds of workshops around how the teams could communicate better and collaborate better with each other, and those workshops were so important. And you kind of wonder why in school, like math and English and science are so important, but like what about like a communication course? Like we're missing that. I mean, schools are doing way more than they used to do for sure, but like what about an effective communication class? Or what if we used like cognitive behavioral therapy, not as therapy, but simply teaching these schools. Like cognitive behavioral therapy, it helps people manage their problems by changing the way that they think and behave. You know, that mantra I was talking about, and it's commonly used to treat anxiety and depression, but like, why wouldn't we put this in our educational curriculum so that we can mold our children into being better functioning adults and, you know, tackle those things early on, right?
Totally agree with you. So the solution is that you do the campus for the daycare, but then you extend it all the way to 18 years old. So we make sure that when they come to the workplace, they're already equipped with these skill sets.
So the little campus, that's the thing. Like if I can just say, like when we moved to Toronto, you know, we were talking about passion and what you build, and the best companies come from being passionate and enduring the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Like those are the best companies, not just an idea, solving a problem. And so Garage Sale was to solve a problem. There's no Facebook Marketplace or anything. Craigslist was creepy, and that's why I built it. But now, like when I moved to Toronto, the daycare system here was awful. First of all, rundown places and strip malls with parking lot playgrounds, and you're paying $25,000 a year for that. And the owners are just taking the money because all their wait lists are full, 3 years long, and they're putting it in their pockets, and they're not putting it back into the schools. So, you know, thinking about it again with my daughter, it's like daunting that I would have to think about this all over again because I wasn't satisfied with the care that was there for my son. I found a building, an old church that has half an acre of green space, and I bought it. And now I'm building the little campus for my daughter, okay? And it has like, I'm hiring specialists. It's based on the whole child approach, which is a very individualized approach, taking care of, you know, mental health, academics, challenging them, you know, making them feel supported, all of that stuff. So we are doing that. And it's very, yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. That's promising. That's very promising.
Thank you. So can I move to ask my question?
Yeah, like I just wanted to just keep in mind that well, like we'll go for another, let's say 7 minutes, and then after, like, because we have some questions that I just want to make sure that they get asked, but just, you know, otherwise go ahead.
Okay, I'll go fast. So I saw a video of you where you explained your background as a millennial in a traditional corporation and the need that you saw for a more compelling environment in terms of work culture. And I couldn't agree more, right? But as a founder of a tech startup, I felt the pendulum swung completely, and there was nothing traditional about it. I would attend swanky recruiting events that were catered with fine cheeses and wine and cool swag, and CEOs standing on soapboxes listing the perks in working for their companies, gym memberships, massages. And I personally believed in more in sharing like our passion, our mission, our values, our user stories. So I made sure to offer those perks though, because it was just something you did owning a tech company because of the competition. I'm curious about your take on this, both as a millennial and a founder. So now that you're in the startup space and out of the other fields, I'm sure you've had many clients in tech. And do you feel that millennials are stereotyped? And then do you feel that startups are getting this perk-driven culture all wrong? And then finally, I read that you bring like psychological safety to teams and that your programs at Glee Factor used research-based methodology. Can you talk a little bit more about that too?
Yeah, I'll try to keep it in 3 minutes. a lot of questions.
You can have a full 5-6 minutes.
5-6 minutes. Okay.
because this is very interesting.
Yeah, so basically, thank you so much for the questions. They're great. The first question is that we don't work with that many startups, I have to say, because startups, they they're still in this phase that we have the greatest cultures because of perks. So they still don't see, unfortunately, the value of external help and going deeper in the conversation of culture and team dynamic. So for that, obviously, like, we've worked with smaller, medium companies, and we're always open to it, but we've realized that there is this, like, somehow ego around when we say work culture, like, we got it all,
Yeah.
And this is unfortunate because, I've witnessed many startups in Montreal throughout the years, and unfortunately, yes, they got it wrong. I mean, I love the idea of beautiful designs and all that. I'm coming from traditional backgrounds like mining industry, construction companies. So I look at these design offices and I think, oh my goodness, they got it all. But then when I got into the reality of the work, the very harsh layoffs, like asking people to stay at, like, work late, not fitting cultures, like a bit of, like, not having diverse, like, teams, like sexism, racism, like ageism, like you see a lot of these in the
Exactly. Yes.
yeah, in that, and therefore you think that the perks are great. There's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah.
But it's just like a family dynamic. Like, you can just register your kids to tennis classes and buy them the best things, and like, but at the end of the day, if you don't have that safe environment that they can come to you and talk to you and learn from you and feel comfortable to say that, okay, like, I'm afraid, I'm scared, or I have this crazy idea, like, you don't have that much of a healthy family dynamic. So it is good to have those perks, but they can never replace a psychologically safe space. And that's where I think that, we know it from the research that, psychological safe space is the number one, like, key element for successful, like, teams. We know that from Google research, we know that from the person who came up with. So what we do, we develop actually our methodology around the concept of psychological safety. Our methodology is called Connect, Play, Grow. So we use the creativity and play to develop low risk environments, because that's when people can take risks. And that's where they feel comfortable, because they think that they're a new context, and that's where they share and they open up. And then you can, you're coming from an education background, then you can actually add a piece of learning element to it from social science, because they're ready to capture things, because learning itself is also extremely risky for people, especially in the workplace, that you have to know it all. So this is basically how we combine social science. We go to Daniel Goleman, Brené Brown, like everyone who's doing like some great work in the field of social and human science. And we combine it with like play and creativity in our workshops and our programs to make sure that people feel included, people feel safe and connected. Because if that happens, that's when they're going to do their best job. That's when they're going to stay engaged, and that's where they're going to stay longer at your job. The ping pong tables alone is not going to keep someone at a job. That we know it, and I'm actually happy to say that after a couple of years, I think even startups, they're starting to learn that the perks was just a hype, that it came, but it's not enough. It's not the only solution. You cannot say we have a inclusive culture, and and I think during the pandemic, what happened to the Wing, to like, I don't know, Refinery 29, so many amazing culture, like companies that you think that they're amazing when it comes to culture, but they're still got it wrong, because it is hard. You cannot necessarily blame them. It is a extremely hard process that you need to actually commit yourself to it. You need to put budget and time for it, and it's going to take a long time. So I think that, like, as I said, like, I think, like, I'm so happy that you brought it up, that it is hard for a leader that is building a team and building a business to take care of this. So that's why in a startup ecosystem, it's somehow lost, because people are just getting funds and they need to deliver all the time. So, but that's why we just say that we can come and support along the way, so that we know that somewhere this is something, these conversations are taken care of, and that you are having that team dynamic that can help you also thrive in your business and get the business results that you want, and also take care of the well-being of your people. at the same
Yeah,
time.
I just see the passion in everything you're saying. You've been there on the other end of things and now have created a product to solve that problem. And it's like, just hearing what you're saying, it just validates everything that I felt running this startup and going like, what is it about the ping pong tables, Like when COVID happened, there's no more ping pong tables. What happens to your culture then, right?
Yes, now that people are not working like together in a space, in these nice spaces, like what is the solution? So I think that the companies that had a bit of more depth in their team dynamics, I think they're surviving and thriving much better during this time. And maybe it was a good test for all of the companies to somehow evaluate what they're doing.
Well, thank you for building such a mission-driven company. Like that's really, really great stuff.
But that's good. I mean, two women who are going from the pain to great stuff.
But honestly, I could, and I'm sure that's the case for the audience as well. I could listen to you guys talk for an extra hour easily.
And honestly, I love to talk with you and Tami for hours too.
Me too. Let's start a talk show.
Yeah, maybe we could have series 1 or 2 or 3. Think about that.
I think we got something there. So well, we have a bit less than 10 minutes left. Unfortunately, he went by extremely fast. So we just have a couple of questions that were kind of already answered while you were talking, but I just wanted to reiterate how well, Tami, you mentioned, especially when it comes to work-life balance. It's not about trying to have the perfect thing, right? Because the question was really about how do you balance it all when the lines are getting so blurred, like especially when you're working from home. So like how do you make sure that you keep everything compartmentalized, I guess, and this is for Nogol as well.
Yeah, well, so without repeating myself, like I just want to validate that and just tell you guys the truth that my life is hectic, and I started this webinar with my life at this moment feels a little bit like a train wreck, and then I talked about building the train actually and all the pieces. But because I'm in startup mode and there's COVID at the same time, it's not like my business is running yet. There are days where I don't get by. I just feel underwater, and I just want to tell you that that's so normal and it's okay and it's hard. And how do I get through it? You just get through it. You just wake up the next day, it's a new day, and you try your hardest to show up for yourself, as we were talking about. And then you forgive yourself for all those things that I talked about, but not only for not being the perfect everything that I said, but you can also forgive yourself for not being balanced. It's okay to not be balanced. Just try to do it when you can, and try not to listen to all the people who are saying that they're so balanced, because they're probably not.
Yep. Agreed.
You nailed it, Tami. Next question. You nailed it. We're good. Covered it all. Got nothing to add to that.
But it is true that as women we tend to put a lot of, well, because also it was a new thing, right? Like to be a woman, to have a career, to have a family, and to excel at everything, right?
And then COVID.
And then COVID, right? It's it totally threw a lot of balances into the imbalance mode. That's for sure. My other question, I think, before we close, is well, Nogol, you mentioned that instead of having those unrealistic, or not unrealistic, but huge goals, you decided to go with smaller goals. Right. And the question is, can you provide some examples of how you broke it down for it to be more attainable?
Yeah. So basically, there is this thing that SMART goals, that it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based.
Yes.
So I have that in the office, but I mean, I barely look at it, but I really try to make sure that whatever we're developing as a goal, especially at a smaller one, it is specific, it is really measurable, so I can, because sometimes just it would be awesome if we can just sell this much this month, or we can develop this many products, but it's not necessarily attainable, it's not time-based. So one thing that I do, it's following that procedure of SMART goal. The other thing is really breaking down. For example, we want to develop a product, and develop a product, it has like 5 stages, 6 stages, you know, it comes from the first draft, and then it goes to the copywriter, and then designer, development, blah, blah, blah. I actually do the first goal as just to develop the first draft by me. And this is like a couple of days of activity, and that's totally fine. And then the next goal, next step could be like reviewing it with the copywriter and go through all the details. And the next one is going to checking with the designer, development, and the final review. So basically there are 5 small goals rather than develop this tool in like one goal. And it really helps me to manage the time better, manage my energy better, because I've seen it, you know, we were just saying it before the conference starts, that with this weather and as it gets colder and everything, it's really harder for all of us in the team to work. So our level and energy levels are lower. So I've learned that, okay, we still need to deliver, but we can break it down so that it doesn't look overwhelming constantly. So breaking down into the steps and constantly checking out with the SMART, you know, idea that is really specific about like marketing, about development, about like business development, like sales, operation, like which category it is in. So like to make sure that I can follow it, and it doesn't say, you know, because I think one thing that for me, I don't know for Tami is the same thing, but I get overwhelmed quite easily with like many tasks and many things to juggle around. So when I just categorize them and I break them down into these smaller like goals, it's much better. And then try to
compartmentalize them too.
Yeah.
Right? Not think about everything all at once.
Exactly, yes. Just break it down so that you're going to be more focused. Do that part very well. Give yourself a little bit of tap on the shoulder and then move on.
And Nogol, I don't know about you, but like in my last company, maybe it's a thing in the startup world, but we celebrated our failures. Like it was the kind of thing where we would learn something, iterate, and then we would get it right. So like we do like tests with the users, and things would fail miserably. We do user testing, and we found out everything that we did wrong, and then we learned out what to do right. And so we would celebrate, you know, there was this whole concept of you should be celebrating your failures. And it really is true, actually, because it brings you to the right answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like celebrating failures, and now that, you know, even sometimes you still don't know that it's a failure, but it's a huge challenge. What I do is that I develop, like even this week, like I've realized that, okay, things didn't happen the way that it was supposed to. So I do the learning curve. That what is the challenge? What are the solutions? And what is the learning? What could we do better? And just try to somehow improve the process. And obviously, if it fails, just learn from it and move on. Yes, I totally agree with you that this is the best way in order to make it more attainable and realistic in general, the project.
Well, thank you so much for this exchange. It was truly wonderful. And unfortunately, our time together has come to an end. So I'm just going to invite Laura to come back to close this wonderful conversation. But it was a delight, and we should definitely think about continuing this conversation into a show or podcast or something. I think we definitely tapped into something there.
Julie, you're a wonderful moderator. Can I just say?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
A great listener. Yes, a great listener and like an amazing moderator. And Tami, it was really great talking to you and talking to 3 of you. Like it was it's a retreat for me as well.
Oh, me too. I'm so glad that I got to know you, Nogol, and I hope we can connect after.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nogol, Tami, Julie, for, as Julie said, a rich and I must say energizing discussion. I know Julie at one time said it was brightening the evening, and it definitely brightened my Thursday evening, and I'm sure it did for many of our participants. I also want to say thank you to the amazing team, Kay and Irene, working behind the scenes to get the Q&A and everything rolling. And so thank you so much to our attendees. If you'd like to stay connected with the MWA, check out our Facebook page. And also just to let you know that we're currently receiving applications for a mentorship pilot program between mentor and mentees for McGill alumni of all career stages, not just for new grads. So you can find a link to that program in the email that will follow. So with that, thank you so much, and everybody have a wonderful rest of the evening.